Published that article from last night yet?
No,
Oh, okay.
I didn't know. Yeah, go ahead.
How are we going to talk about it then?
I don't know. What's been going on?
Monday morning, Rogue is over. The Rogue 2024 happened in Aberdeen, Scotland. We're still here. We'll be heading out on our respective journeys later today, but we've been having fun doing these shows in the morning. It was not something we really planned on doing this year, and figured we needed to probably do a one last one because the final day was a pretty cool day. There were a lot of type point races that we were looking at coming into the day, and it actually got kind of closer as the day wore on. The two events that they had prior to the final, we thought there might be some big swings because of maybe the difficulty of the pegboard and some of the unknown aspects of the handstand walking. And it did turn out that there were some athletes who had really good and really bad events, one way or the other, early on, that really tightened things up heading into the final, which was announced late in the day and ended up being pretty exciting. I think it was the shortest workout of the weekend. Big demand on the athletes, still 30 sandbag cleans, but we've been a theme at Rogue historically, and this year is the tight margins, and there were really tight margins in the end. We got a chance to talk to tons of athletes last night for a variety of different amounts of time, and also this morning at breakfast I saw some of them. And for some of them it was like extremely rewarding, very, very happy. The small breaks, or the great performances, however you want to talk about it, went their way. And for others, they came up like just short of the goal, and you could see some frustration, but I think healthy frustration. So yeah, I think there's a fair amount to talk about up and down the leaderboard from yesterday. Where do you want to? What do you think we should start?
Let's start with the leaderboard. We'll start with the men. 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, men is a good place to start, I think. Patrick said, what did you say? I've been inspired to write again, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I did write an article last night before we went out to dinner with the team about Jeff. You can see his performances there, and there's nothing. The worst event finish was on the duel. I always say at Rogue that if your worst event finish is on the duel, that's like kind of where you want to be. It's a little bit of a random event for the men this year. It was a little bit even more random because there were a different set of standards in the first few rounds than the last couple rounds. I think it was the right decision at the time for them to make, but I do think it cost Jeff a few spots on that event. He was looking like a top 5 finisher until they introduced the burpees, and then in that first round, it's almost like the first round of the thing to begin with. Like you have to reevaluate and refigure it out. So I even asked him, do you think it cost you some spots? He said, yeah, probably 4 to 5 spots. He feels like he could have been fourth or fifth, ends up 9th. Doesn't matter in the end. He wins Rogue. And the article I wrote last night just like shows that this has been a long time coming for him. It's his 4th year at Rogue. It's his 4th podium at Rogue. He was a lot closer to winning it last year than most people realized because of what happened in the duel, where he just tripped over a log in a round that ended up costing him to miss advancing by 1 spot, or it was 0.7 seconds or something like that. And then especially after choosing not to compete this year at the CrossFit Games, therefore foregoing the opportunity to defend his title that was questioned by many after Roman got injured the year before, it was important to him. You heard what he said in his interview. I've been training for 2 months with one thing on my mind. I've been competing this weekend with one thing on my mind, and I got it. That's what he said. And what it is the Rogue Championship belt, which only 4 men and 2 women have ever hoisted above their heads in the history of Rogue. You're muted still.
Yeah, I think what it kind of does is like, it's a good. I mean, you said all the right things in terms of that he didn't get a chance to defend his title through his own choices, but outside of Roman, just had the field that he normally would have win against. I mean, if he would have competed at the games, it would have been a different field than he normally would see because of the circumstances. So it's a good it was good to see him out there. It was good to see him perform. I know he was kind of upset on some of the event finishes, especially on the last day, but I think overall it was Jeff Adler, performance was something that we expect to see. All top tens, 7 out of 9 top fives. It was pretty. At no point did it seem like he was threatened outside. I mean, even after day one, after he ended day one with that event win. It seemed like he pretty much had it in the bag.
Yeah, and Kiki Dixon asked him, was there kind of a turning point? He pointed to that event. He was, the handstand push-ups back squat was a kind of a nice way to end the day. And if you look at the guys who were closest to him by the end of the weekend, those next 4 guys, it wasn't a great event for them. So Dallin did the best of the 4 of them, taking 8th in that to Jeff's first. And 8th place is costing you 40 points, I think. So he's gaining at least 60 points and 90 points in the case of Brent Fikowski on an event to close out day one. And when, in my opinion, he was coming in as the favorite, and the all these guys, if they're looking back, like they don't remember beating him recently, except for Vellner, who beat him last year at Rogue. He's won his last 3 semifinals. He won the last time he competed at the games. He beat all of them at Rogue last year. He doesn't compete in Dubai anymore. He doesn't compete in Wadapalooza anymore. So you have very, very few opportunities to beat this guy. And in that regard, he's like Fraser was. He picks his spots carefully. He trains very seriously, and he shows up with a mission. And it's hard to beat him right now. So to end that day in that way, where he gains his biggest points advantage against his closest competitors, that was like kind of the separation he needed. It allows him the mindset that he expressed to me yesterday morning of, it was Ricky who was the guy threatening him coming into Sunday. And he said, I just have to keep Ricky at bay. Like if I keep Ricky within a spot or 2 of me all day, I'm good. Turns out that Ricky had a tough time with the pegboard, and that sort of dropped him out of contention. In fact, there was one point in that heat where all other men were on the ski erg and Ricky was left back on the pegboard by himself. And I guess, some people had seen the pegboard where people were spinning around and doing it that way. And I don't think that was allowed. I think the rules were you needed to face the pegboard. And that was the way that Ricky had actually become most proficient at it, from what I understand. And then he wasn't able to kind of figure it out as quickly as the rest of the athletes were to do it the way that was mandated by the competition rules. And actually, Kotler told us last night that he actually ended up doing better on the floor than I had thought when I saw that he wasn't going to be able to do it the way that he figured it out to do in practice, basically.
Yeah, it was. I was able to watch how he was doing it, and what he was kind of doing was it was almost a chin up. He was using a lot of lats, a lot of forearms. He was pulling himself up, yeah, and then moving around. And I saw that the first round, and I was like, that's not going to be. He's not going to be able to maintain that. I saw a couple other athletes doing that too, but none struggled as much as Ricky on that, and it's unfortunate because that was something where that is something that I think Ricky was typically good at in terms of adjusting and making those adjustments. And upper body pulling is really good for him, but he just bumped himself out way too fast. And I think the whole weekend probably kind of wore him down a little bit. And we saw that especially if you look at some of his results.
Well, scroll if you can on this. Go back to that article for a second and scroll down to the table that I put in there where it shows Jeff's finishes over the last 4 years. All of the athletes that I spoke to yesterday, and we talked to Jason for a little bit. We talked to Dallin. We talked to Justin. I didn't talk to Ricky. We talked Justin Kotler. We talked to Brent quickly. A lot of people were talking to Brent yesterday, but the general sentiment was Yeah, Jeff was really good this weekend. Like all the guys understand that. And when you put it on paper here and you look, he's been good, but his average finish in the first 3 years was just over sixth when you do the average, and this year was just over fourth. If you're averaging 2 spots better per event over 9 events, that's 90 points better. Like, 10 points per event that you're averaging better over the course of the weekend. And we've been hammering this home for you guys, like in the men's field, especially right now. Every event, there's 1 or 2 guys, there's 3 or 4 guys sometimes that you're going to be within a few seconds of. On day 1, events 1 and 2, Sam Cornway was at the front of 2 groups that in 9 seconds of action yielded him 40 additional points. Well, Jeff's able to do that on every workout. Basically, he's just getting a guy here, getting a guy here, getting a guy there, and that adds up. And like this, I thought I didn't, obviously I'm pulling information to just try to see what happened this year that was different than the last year's, and here it is. He's just more consistent and more consistently good than he was in the past couple of seasons. Whether that's less mistakes, other guys making more mistakes, or that he's getting better, which I think it's that he's just still getting better. And to me, I made a statement at the end of this that if you're going to call anybody the fittest on earth right now, I think it has to be Jeff Adler.
Oh, 100. I don't think anyone will argue with that. Not a single person. I mean, he's he's proven it, on the field of competition. And there's I really don't think there's a debate over it. I mean, a lot of people, again, could say Roman, but I don't think Roman in this field, I think he beats Roman if Roman is here. Just based on that, like you said, the consistency.
And there's this part of sports that you can't ignore. Is like we talked about it last year. You also have to be healthy enough to compete. And Roman got injured last year at the games. He was injured this year at the games. He's not at this competition because he's injured or recovering from injury. Yeah. And we I still feel this way about Ricky too. For Roman and Ricky, because they haven't been able to string together years of consistent health and performance, I don't think we've seen the best of them yet. And I don't know what the best of them looks like yet.
I agree on that. I think, I totally. I mean, I think the closest we've seen to the capacity of what Ricky can perform would be probably the 2022 games. The 2022 games when he was leading pretty much most of the games, and then Justin ended up winning, and then then last year with Roman just before the injury. But we don't know until those guys until unfortunate circumstances happen. That they've been both of them kind of been snake bitten when it comes to stuff like this. But we really don't know.
Is it snake? Is it snake bitten or is it competing too much?
I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, you gotta look at Ricky. I mean, he's riding a bike. He's on his, he's riding a bike.
But then within 9 months of that bike injury, he does the Rogue qualifier, he does Rogue, he does Dubai, he does Wodapalooza individual and Wodapalooza team. 2 months later is semifinals, then or Open, quarterfinals, semifinals. There's no, and then you can. I'm just saying, put it in contrast with Adler.
Yeah,
Adler has a very clear path for his year. He knows he has to do the qualifiers to get to the games. He competes at the games. He competes at one major off-season event, and then he goes back into his routines. He eats at home. He sleeps at home. He trains in his gym. He coaches I don't think he's coaching anymore. He's doing all the small things on a daily basis in a predictable way. That is what champions do in this sport now. And a lot of the others are traveling, competing, doing these other things, and he's not doing that.
I don't know. I don't think that's it. I think, I don't think this event had a reflection of Ricky competing too much. I think these are just his bad events were events that he either couldn't adjust to, or he didn't make the proper changes, or he just, it was an event that he normally wouldn't have been good at anyways. I don't think it has anything or a direct reflection of him competing too much. Maybe a little bit, but I don't think it's that big of it. I don't know. I don't
know. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to it yet, but I mean, I've referenced it a few times on these shows now. You know, Matt Fraser, he's doing these Ask Me Anythings, and he talked about this, and he's written about this. And Adler's this way. You know, he travels with his own maple syrup, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer that athletes, they I don't know. I just think the best test of where they're at is by competing. That's just me personally.
Right, but if you show up to compete twice and you win both times, and you show up to compete 5 times and you win 3 times and get injured once, you know, I'm going to take I want to be the guy that's competing twice a year, winning twice a year, healthy for 5 years in a row. You know, I don't care. Like Fraser didn't need to compete 6 times a year.
Yeah. But one is because he was making enough money to be a professional athlete to do this stuff.
But how do you make the big money in this sport?
Well,
you win the big
either
events.
You win, or you do a bunch of, or you I mean, I don't know. I just, yeah. I just don't know. I mean, I just think, yeah, I mean, I guess the argument is like Justin doesn't do a lot of events either, and he's won 2, and he's kind of stuck with that. But
he's won 2 games, but during that time, he won 2 games. He won 2 Rogue, and he was only doing those competitions.
Yeah,
and
I
it's
know.
like, look, we don't know if Jeff will be able to sustain this any longer than Justin did. It's hard to get to the top. Who said it? I think Laura said it. It's harder to stay at the top.
Yeah,
because everyone's coming for you now. And we're going to get to Laura and Tia, of course. But I just felt like in writing this article and watching this weekend and in doing this show that it was important to me to recognize what Jeff did this weekend, what he's been doing for the last 2 years. And, I don't think it's by a huge margin necessarily, but I think he's the guy to beat anytime he shows up right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's no debate about that. I mean, this is something that I saw going back to those the 2021 21 Rogue, when he was coming off that, which at the time was worst games finish, and we saw him kind of reinvent himself. He was kind of known as the strong man. Outside of gi, he was one of those guys who could lift a lot of weight. And then
his worst games finish. He was 33rd in 2019 in the World Cuts year, but he was 13th in 2021 after taking 5th in 2020.
Yeah. I said one of his worst, at that point, but yeah, and that was something he just like, hey, for me to do well, I need to pretty much live on this echo bike. And then he kind of reinvented himself as, hey, aerobic capacity. He started, and he became a more well-rounded CrossFitter. And then but the thing is, that year, 2021, he was doing a lot of competitions because he needed to see what he was doing was working. Because he did Rogue that year, he did Dubai, and then he ended up doing Wadapalooza.
With the team, with the team.
Yeah, but
you're right.
But he got a lot of data, and that's what I'm saying. It's like he got a lot of data. He got to see if what he was doing was working, and even
it's not just him. Like this comment from SPM is good, but it's not. The picture at the top of this was not a mistake. The one that I for the first time in maybe ever, I chose this picture because it was the only one I had. No, because Carolyn's always there. She's always learning, and they're always working together in the gym at the competitions, gathering that data, like you said. So, look, it's not a mistake what happened this weekend on the men's side. They have a very calculated approach. It's maybe not the approach for everyone, but it's working for them right now. And, it was, there's 10 guys that could have won that I would have felt happy for them if they won, of course, but, or maybe 20. But I was really happy for Jeff and Caroline that they got this. Let's go back to the leaderboard because behind them was really
the story.
Well, no, there were other stories, but it was like a tumultuous kind of exchange throughout the weekend. But by Sunday morning, Brent Fikowski really just like made a big statement. And you'll see here, he went first, fourth, and third on the last day. But apart from that 18th, he was 6th or better on every event this weekend. In the last competition that he's doing, and if anybody was doubting what he said, that I feel like I'm the best I've ever been, it's hard to argue with that now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, yeah, despite the 18th, but that's Brent. He'll have one workout that he'll struggle on, but you just knew it. I don't know, something about him. You just like you don't make an announcement like that and then just go like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of cash it in. He I felt like this was coming even after day one. I felt like, okay, Brent's gonna go on a run here. He's not, but not only that, but he's gonna make a run for the top spot. I mean, why not? He came up a little short, and it was a little bit harder. 6th, a 4th, and a 2nd on day 2, and then a 1st, a 4th, and a 3rd. But after event 7, I was like, okay, this looks really good for him, and yeah, it was just great to see. The fans were just amazing. I mean, they at one point they started one thing
Brent
about
Fikowski.
Yeah, they started their own chant for him. It was really unfortunate because
it's such a soccer thing to do that, or
soccer thing to do. Yeah, it was unfortunate because I was on the other side of the arena and I heard that chant starting, and I was like, and then right around then, our buddy Zach, the DJ, he turned up the music and it kind of almost drowned him out. And because I think if Zach would have heard that, he would have lowered it down. I think the whole crowd would have been able to hear that chant because it was kind of stuck to one side of the arena. But it was just really
I took a little video of it. I thought it was a cool moment.
yeah.
I was impressed that he didn't cry yesterday. With
He
all
almost did. He almost did
before the final.
No, he almost when Kiki asked him what he's going to miss the most. He took a moment there because he was about to, he ended up talking about is the guys out back, the guys in the back. He got very emotional because I think that is the hardest thing. He's a sport athlete. He came up from club volleyball. He played it in college. He loves being around the guys. I mean, he still meets up with his old college teammates, and they play like tournaments. Play like a tournament or an alumni game and stuff like that. And if you look at his posts, those are things that he puts on there. Outside of some of the, of training in his family.
And
but
he wasn't the
he
only one
there.
And he wasn't the only one that talked about the camaraderie of the guys. That was something
Adler did
that
too.
Adler mentioned too.
Yeah,
and we mention it sometimes. Like, and I actually was talking with Dallin last night about this. Like, really, I think it's a unique balance that the top guys in the sport have. And I know that some people are like, no, there needs to be more cutthroat. There needs to be more trash talk. It's like the guys have these guys that are regularly in the top heat, that are battling for podium spots. They have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And they are also each individually insanely competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And like to be both of those is a challenging thing to find. Then to have a group of like 5 to 10 guys that's like that, I think it's pretty rare.
Yeah. They all have the same goals, and they all understand the pain and suffering that they have to go through to get to it. So it's hard not to have that respect. It's hard not to kind of relate, and you can't put yourself on an island like that. I mean, I think when Ricky came back, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, we finally got a villain," and then everyone realized that Ricky's a fucking great dude. He's a good dude. That happened that first games back in 2021. Everyone was cheering on him, cheering for him. And then, in different phases, it seemed like Jason Hopper was going to be that guy because he was kind of standing low and kind of stayed away from everyone. But then he's turned into this, I don't think he's turned into it because I think that's who Jason is. He's a fun loving guy. He's a very competitive guy. And then it took him a while to kind of find his footing, but he found like people like Dallin, Fikowski, and Adler. As you start finishing near the top, you're going to be corralled with those guys. You're going to be grouped with those guys for, a lot, not just at the games, but in other competitions. It's hard.
I want to throw a question at you that I was having a mini debate in the comment section. I think it was on the Fikowski career post we put up. Because we kind of asked like where would he fall in the all-time rankings, and there were some people that wanted to put him as high as 4, others that had him 6, 7, 8 range, and someone was making a pushback like there's no way you can rank this guy ahead of Ben Smith. And And I was saying, if you're just looking at the games exclusively, and that's how I used to do my rankings, was I'm just taking the games because it's the only competition that everyone's competing in. Like that's the season that everyone was pushing towards. But at this point, I think we've had enough of a period of time. Like that has still been the case up until this year's CrossFit Games. All of the best athletes every single year have been striving to and then competing at the games, semifinals, quarterfinals, and the open. And so those are the most consistent touch points or data points that we have had. And while there is still an inconsistency because not everyone has the opportunity to get, well, they do have the opportunity to get into Rogue, but you have to be good enough at these other things that are very hard to do. Not everyone goes to Dubai, not everyone goes to Wadapalooza, but when you're talking about the greats of all time at this point, it's hard for me to not look at the accomplishments that guys like Vellner and Fikowski and Medeiros and Ricky and Roman and Adler have had outside of the game season as additional meaningful data points. Maybe not on the same level as winning the games or podium at the games, but it's hard to just discount them completely.
No, I mean, you can't. I think with someone like Brent versus Ben Smith, which I think is very compelling. I mean, you take away Ben Smith's one title. I know you can't take it away, but I mean, what has been done. I mean, they're not that far apart in age. For a while, that was, I mean, up until 2019, he had a streak of going to the games ever since, the ranch days. But I think Brent, again, especially since Brent is like at right now the fittest he's ever been, we're not seeing this like gradual,
No, you have to keep in mind when you look at what Vellner and Fikowski have done from the time they went to the CrossFit Games, they were in the top 5.
Yeah.
And at this time, 9 years later, they're still in the top 5.
Exactly.
That's 9 consecutive years where they've been amongst the top 5 guys on earth. And if you look at the only data points where they weren't in the top 5, it was either a really, really weird format for the year 2019 or 2020, or something I hadn't really thought about but I also don't think I've heard anyone talk about this for the men. 2021, when Brent's worst year, that wasn't one of those weird years. He took 16th. That was the first year that he had a baby. And we talk about these little details about what happens in people's lives that makes them go from being good to great, and that sleep and nutrition and routine and whatever. Like, it doesn't matter if you're the guy or the girl in the relationship. Probably that first year that you're having your first baby, there's some stuff at home that's disrupted.
Yeah.
Sleep.
I mean, and I think that he's figured it out. But as the professor he would figure it out, and he has, to the point where he had another one, and it's just they have a system down. He figured it out. But yeah, you're totally right. There's those outside factors do play a role. It's kind of like, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, SPM year 1, no sleep. Yeah, which is a huge aspect of recovery. Obviously, these athletes love sleep,
especially year 1, baby 1. Like, it's a big change in any couple's life, parent's life.
Yeah, but it was cool. I mean, it was Brent.
Hey, if he's really done, if he really never goes and competes as an individual on the competition floor again, he podiumed in his last CrossFit Games appearance. He podiumed in his last Rogue Invitational appearance, and he's going to go down as one of the greats of his era. Over time, things obviously evolve and change and whatever, but it's fun to kind of sit back and look and see all the things he's accomplished. If you haven't seen the post that we put out, if you haven't read some of the articles that I think Barkley and Halpin have worked with on different sites, take a moment, look over some of those things. I think even Hiller put a clip together of like all Fikowski's wins at the games. It's a real quick way to see some of the impressive things he's done over his career. So even if you just have a few minutes to check some of those things out, he's a special person in the sport as an athlete. And I think he has intentions to be to continue to have a pivotal role moving forward in a different capacity. But I want to, yeah, we'll talk about that another day. I want to drop down to Jason here. We set this whole weekend up as far as Jason Hopper's concerned, saying, I want to say he can do better than 7th. He did at the games. He hasn't yet at Rogue. I don't know what it's going to take. And here we go. He got 2 event wins. He's the leader in the clubhouse for event wins on the men's side in Rogue all time. And he finally got this podium. He wrote in a post he put up last night. It's been a long time that I've been dreaming of achieving something like this. Well, long time is relative, of course. He's only been here for 3-4 years, but it can feel like 10 years when you're putting in as much work as he has, when you feel like you're as close as he's been. And look, in the semifinals, he is in the North America East semi. He's constantly going up against some of the best guys. He's come up, he's had this up and down games trajectory. He's been stagnant at Rogue. It's frustrating. Sometimes people give up. Sometimes people get deflated, discouraged, whatever. He hasn't done that. He's doubled down. He's stayed focused. He moved back home. I actually love that he took the year at risk going to Vermont. Like, if you never take that risk early,
You never know.
you maybe always wonder, what if I did go? What if, and it's okay to go and try something and for it not to work out. And it's great to be able to honestly evaluate that and say, you know what? I think I'm a homebody. I think that my friends, mini golf, my community, my church, whatever he does down there, Crash, JR, these pieces around me, that's my recipe. And it looks like it is, because I think that Jason is now, after this performance, these last 2 performances, is now in the conversation that at the very least, if he's in a competition, he's the podium threat. And it's not going to be very long before people are saying, oh shit, Jason could win this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it. He started his his CrossFit career at a major CrossFit event with a victory against
the champ at the time. Yes.
Yeah. So, and we talked about this in the last show, in the previous shows too. Like, how, everything was there. I mean, I remember then that year I picked him for the podium for the games, as a rookie, and
Me
then
too. And so did Dave.
So it's one of those things where, these, expectations, but I think what it did, it took him a while to find his footing, and he's found it, and he's evolved.
You mean those TRCX2 trainers? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Found his footing with those, and he's evolved as not only as an athlete but as a person too. And we've always known that Jason has his home run potential, but now we're kind of seeing, I mean, outside of log muscle ups, him becoming this athlete who we always thought he would be, especially as a bigger athlete, which he'll tell you, it's athletes like Brent that kind of like, show him that there's a path forward. Same way with Dallin. I was able, at the end of that event, you saw a lot of athletes kind of giving Fikowski flowers, in terms of, not literally, but figuratively, just a lot of them kept, even though, a lot of them came. I sat there watching exchange between, I think I might have captured it in a picture. It was Brent and Dallin, and they were talking, and then Brent just like put his arm around him, kind of like an older brother, and then like, and it was just a really cool interaction. I saw the same interaction with Jason, and Jason looked like he was having so much fun out there. And I think the mental side, we were able to talk to a lot of people this weekend, and some of it we'll probably allude to when we talk about Gabby, is talking about, we met her mindset coach, and I think right now Jason, his mindset coach, I mean, I think a lot of credit has to go to Marconi, has to go to JR, has to go to that crew of what he has, and they know how to handle Jason, because Jason can be very volatile in terms of like, if he does bad, he's known as like he sulks, or he'll just he just wants to be by himself or whatever. Jake's been around him long enough to kind of like figure out how to approach him. So when you finish 19th at an event like that, and
Dude, we saw him on Saturday night. He was
Yeah.
he was in the hotel waiting for some food, and he was sitting
Mhm.
down in his chair, and he was like, and he was talking about the 19th. He wasn't talking about the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And we told him, I said, "Well, did you see the article I put up? A lot of almost everybody has a bad event at Rogue." And he
Yeah.
was like, "Really?"
Mhm.
You know? And like that lit I saw his mindset change a little bit. He was like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah. I mean, look, it's hard to have a 19th, 20th place finish and podium. It's not impossible, but
Yeah.
a lot of people who finished 4th and 5th at Rogue have had that." And
Mhm.
for him, breaking the streak, the curse, he would probably call it, of 7th, 4th, 5th would have been good. 3rd was amazing. And
Mhm.
just in general, like you mentioned, the log muscle up is a random one-off thing. We've never seen it anywhere else. He was so bad at that in context of how good he was at everything else. Then you look at Ricky and Dallin, their worst finish came on the horizontal pegboard, and it
Mhm.
was, I don't know if Ricky had a technique that was not allowed, and that's what cost him. Dallin had, I think, a calculation error. He went too soon. We said that morning that would happen.
Yeah.
Somebody would go too soon, and he wasn't the only one who did it and pay a price for it. But if you're Jeff, because Fikowski's out of the way now, and you're looking at these guys right behind you, and you see Jason, Ricky, and Dallin,
Mhm.
and their worst event was on horizontal pegboard and log muscle up, which you're not going to see anywhere else. I promise you that Jeff Adler is not sleeping easy saying, "I got those guys beat anytime they show up." No, he
Yeah.
knows that in a certain slate of events that don't include these kind of random things that we've rarely ever see, that those guys are right behind him, and that
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that he'll win the next time he lines up next to them.
This is new territory for Jeff now. He has a target on his back. He was lucky enough that he got enough distance, and he alluded to this. It's like, thank God thank he's thankful that he had so many big events, and his last day wasn't up to par, but but yeah, you're exactly right. These guys are he's not. I mean, it may look like Jeff kind of dominated, and he did for most part, but I think he hasn't won anything dominant. Like even when he won the games, it's like it wasn't in a dominant fashion. It was something where more people attributed to not him winning, but Roman losing it. Which my argument was, it's like, why are we talking about that? I always thought that Jeff won it. You know that he earned that, and just like this, he earned it, and all these guys earned it, and it's great. This is what we need. We need that. We need that. People. We need that. I think we're hitting a new era with Jason and especially Dallin. I think those two are they're kind of almost filling in that role of Vellner or Fikowski did when they first came in.
Well,
You
they,
know.
they certainly have the potential to. The last guy that you see on the screen here is Jay Crouch.
Yes.
We'd been throwing out this thought, like I've been saying for the last 3, 4 competitions. He's at I it was after Rogue last year. I think he was
Hmm.
8th, and I said, I am now a believer that Jay Crouch is amongst the 10 fittest guys on earth, and that if he shows up for a competition and you're not slotting him somewhere in your top 10, that you're not giving him the respect that he's earned through performance. Uh, this morning I saw him and Maddie and Tia down at breakfast, and I was like, we were talking a little bit, and I think we all kind of agreed that there's something different in his body language when he's out there on the floor in the final heat now. And I think
Confident.
Tia could understand this. Like you, if you've watched her career or listened to some of the interviews from 2016, 17, especially, she'll talk about it. I didn't believe that I belonged in the
Yeah.
last heat. I didn't believe I belonged in the middle lanes. I wasn't sure. I was like, was that a mistake? Was I supposed to be here? Was I supposed to do that? And at some point that changed for her. And when that changed for her, it went from really good to holy shit. And
Yeah.
if Jay's at that point now where, because I was watching him really closely going into the final, you know, you're out there. He's had a great day. Look at it, second and second coming into the final. And you could come out there and be like, damn, like, heavy sandbags, like, man, give me a barbell. Like, these guys are fucking big. They got
Hmm.
big arms. Those sandbags are big. I could move at 225 barbell. I could move at 275 barbell, but the sandbag's a different story. Like, he could be in that mind space going into that. But I didn't see that at all. Despite his
Hmm.
finish on the event, I saw him walking down the floor looking like this is my floor. This is my heat. This is where I belong. It was different. The shoulders, the way the shoulders were set, the way the face was. I heard him say 1 minute to go. I was looking at him there, and I was like, there we go. Like that's the next level for him, is to have that belief that like, this is my spot. I do belong here with these guys. And if you look at the performances, I mean, just like the other guys, he had 1 or 2 bad events. We have 5 finishes, 4th or better. You know, if you're a top guy in the sport, Jay's not. He's got a lot of experience. He's not that old.
Yeah,
he's going to be lurking. He's going to be coming. I think we're going to see better finishes from this in his career still.
and I think he's the perfect guy to have. I mean, he's only going to get better, especially in his region. You know, him and Ricky. You know, they're only gonna level up themselves. You know, because for a while, and they have Ricky needs someone to kind of push him, you know, out there because of, you know, they do live on an island. They only show up to these bigger events, but yeah, it was good. I mean, you're only going to see that 14th place, knowing Proven, knowing Shane, knowing Tia, knowing that whole crew. That 14th, especially on that sandbag, they're going to hammer that. They're going to look at that as like, okay, guess what? You know, you're going to have some sandbags at your doorstep when you arrive back home in Australia. And guess what? Once a week, you're going to practice cleaning sandbags.
And I'm curious. I want to watch that back. It was a really fast event. I mean, you guys can see the times there, a couple minutes, and there were a lot of things at stake. And so that's an event where, like, I usually do try to do a really good job of paying attention across all 10 lanes of play. But when it gets down to the end of a weekend, it's kind of like a funnel, and you really dial in on some things. I knew there were 4 guys with Jay having an outside chance to podium at that point. Brent and Adler they didn't have to do anything stressful or impressive to lock up the 1-2 anymore. So I was watching Ricky, Dallin, Jason, and Jay. And then, you know, I zoomed in and I realized it was going to come down to Dallin and Jason. And like, that's where I decided to focus. I want to go back and watch and see, because I also wouldn't be surprised if they decided to take a little risk. If it was like, hey, we're right here, you know, we got a good buffer on the rest of the field. Let's go for it. And let's just see what happens. And if you blow up a little bit on the final feedback. So I want to watch that one back and see if Jay's on the broadcast and if we can see that. Yeah, SPM says Ricky went out too hot. Yeah, that might have been the case also. I think actually even Jeff faded a little bit towards the end. They were like leading. Those 2 guys were leading early through the first 15 reps, I think. And Yonikoski as well. So it was definitely like the guys who could do the last 7 reps the fastest were the ones who were going to win. In that respect, it reminded me a little bit of, you know, Heavy Grace from 2 years ago, where we saw, you know, Vellner was winning and then he finished 10th. Like if you blow up on the last 2 reps of Heavy Grace, that can happen. So definitely he'll be practicing the sandbag cleans, but I also would be curious. I didn't think to ask him this morning if he was maybe taking a little bit of a gamble there and saying, let's go for it, because who knows? And we're going to have, you know, the worst we're doing at this point is 6th anyway. The next portion of the leaderboard here on the men's side is where I would say, we have no problem saying this. We did not get the picks right with these next 4 guys. We both had Guy way down there. We had Justin higher. We had Vellner higher. We had Yona lower. James will say for a second. But those 4 guys right there. And that's the beauty of the sport. And quite frankly,
I will say we made those selections prior. We made those selections prior to know what the events were. Knowing the events, I had to redo my picks. I wouldn't put Guy at 7th, but I wouldn't have had him as low. He'd probably be around the 10th, 10th,
10,
9th,
12, yeah.
But Vellner, but we'll talk about, and Justin, I probably would have had right around where he's at there. And then Vellner, we'll talk about Vellner here soon, but let's talk about Guy.
I mentioned it, I think it was 2 days ago, because I'm sick of people saying to me that Guy isn't fit,
Fit, yeah.
And now he's got another top 10 finish at a significant competition. He's done Rogue twice. He's finished 5th and 7th. You can say all that you want about Rogue. Look at the names in the top 10 and tell me that those guys aren't top 10 athletes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. Yeah. They're all phenomenal. He's got 2 top 10 finishes at the games. They were a couple of years ago. Yeah, he didn't. He's had some bad performances. He missed the games 1 year, but there's variables involved in some of those bad performances that are personal, are situational, with a lack of a depth of field in his region, and him getting really punished for one bad event. having 6 events compared to 9. We said it before, it's different events than Brent, but you said it today. Brent's going to have that 18th. He's going to have that 20th. Yeah, that's all right. It's not. We've never said in this sport that you can't have a bad finish and be great.
Yeah. I mean, it happens to the best of them, especially in a wider field. I mean, longer competition. Like Guy in a 6-event competition versus Guy in a 9 or 12-event competition is totally different, because he's going to have some bad finishes. Yes, he's not going to win the freaking 5K or some type of long monostructural event, but that's fine.
What if he did?
That's one component of fitness. That's one component of fitness, and he's totally confident that he can bounce back from that. He knows he's not going to win it, so he's going to take his time and not overexert himself. I kind of look at it, I kind of almost compare it to like when Emma Carey struggled on the bike 2 years ago. What did she do? She just hung back. She's like, I'm not. What's the difference between me finishing 40th and 39th or 38th? What I'm going to do is I'm going to end
And
up
what's the
hurting myself.
energy expenditure? What's the energy expenditure required to gain a couple points? This is what I'd say to SVM is great, actually. We're not in a place where it says that you're mandated to give maximal effort all the time. What the sport rewards is the person who has the most points at the end of the weekend.
Yeah.
And if you look at this field and you're Guy and you're saying, I could go for it on the run and maybe I could beat 1-2 guys. But how hard am I going to have to work to get those 5-10 points there? And is it going to prevent me from doing what I did on the next 2 events, which is take second and third?
Yeah, the juice is not worth the squeeze in that point, in that aspect. And he knows who he is. He knows the type of athlete he is, and he's fit. He's just not. But he's not the fittest. Or the top of the food chain right now. But the thing is, when it comes to certain events or certain modalities, he is the top, and there's not a single athlete in this field who will disagree with that. You hear like Fikowski and Vellner, they talk about Guy. They talk about his potential, and they talk about not just potential, but they talk about what he can already do, and that's freaking win events. And he's a showman.
I think Kiki interviewed him. She's like, how do you do that? And what did he say? He's like, it's just natural. And she gave him that as one of the options. But he's like, that's just how I am. But, there are some people that do disagree with his approach to life and competing at this point, which I think is absolutely laughable to do. But he's not Jeff Adler. Jeff Adler said it himself. I was training with one thing in mind. I was competing with one thing in mind. And it'd be cool in theory to have 20 guys who are all singularly focused on winning. But that doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work for everyone every year. It doesn't work for everyone every competition. Guy used to be like that. And he didn't like the person that he was outside of the field of play. He didn't like the way that he was handling things with his friends and with his fiance or girlfriend at the time. That's now his wife. And now he has a balance in his life that he's proud of, that he's happy with, that his perspective is actually allowing him to express himself on and off the competition floor in ways that makes him happy. And when Guy is competing happy, he competes better. This week before this, he was doing seminars around Europe, and he was loving that. I think he had just as good a time doing that as he did competing this weekend with the guys. And he's going to probably go and have a week with his wife somewhere, and he's going to have just as good a time doing that. He has his faith, he has his family, he has his community in Brazil, and that works for him. And to me, I don't need Guy to put all that stuff aside. I'm happy that he's embracing those parts of his life, because when I see him out here competing, when we see him before and after, when we see him in the field of play struggling, we still know that he has other things that are meaningful to him that he can fall back on, whether he's 20th or first.
Yeah, 100%. 55 points behind him, Justin Medeiros.
Yeah, so we see Justin Medeiros and Pat Vellner here before yesterday when Jeff won. Those 2 guys had won the last 4 Rogue Invitationals. And I had, been pretty, I would say I'd been a little bit even aggressive towards people who I considered it disrespectful to not pick Vellner in a podium spot, or at least 4th coming into this event. And I thought totally different with Justin. I was expecting Justin to have a performance this weekend that would catapult him back up into the conversation of a guy who is a podium threat anytime he shows up. We have to talk about them in isolation, but basically everyone I've spoken to has said that Vellner was not at 100% this week. He seems like he caught a little bug, and like all the preparation, all the training, getting here early, that all just goes out the window at that point. He's looked to me like he was in survival mode on the floor. And then I started hearing some rumors of him not feeling his best. And it's not an excuse. It's just how it is. It can happen to anyone. The fact that he stuck it out, if that is the case, continue. I mean, man, you see that 15th on the second to last event. He was in a lane, lane 9 and lane 10 on the last two events, which were right in front of where we were sitting with his family. And I was like, he just took like 3 breaks on the first set of double unders. He took a break after like 15 double unders in round 2, and his body language. And I was like, man, so I just think it was a unfortunate little bug that he caught prior to the weekend from everything I've heard. The fact that he still fought through and got a 10th place finish, credit to him. But I'm not holding this against him as Vellner is no longer competitive with those top 5 guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's just, it happens. Sometimes you just have bad days, or in this case, like, you can't be 100% all the time. And very rarely are the CrossFit athletes 100% all the time. They come in with some type of, something, whether it be an injury or sickness or something. It's hard to just be there completely solid, because the training volume that they do throughout the year, it almost makes it impossible to come in 100% healthy and peak physical condition. But on
the other side with Justin, my new assessment of Justin Medeiros is just that at this point in his career, he's not a top 5 guy. He's like a 6th to 12th place guy, depending on who's in the field, what kind of workouts there are, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm curious to see, what the next few competitions or few competitive years look like for him, and if that's just kind of where he hangs out for a bit, if he pushes forward, if he drops back. We talked about it earlier. He had a 2-year run where he was at the top. He won the 2 biggest competitions back-to-back years. That's amazing. But there's a lot of athletes on this list that will never be able to say that they were back-to-back games champions and back-to-back Rogue Invitational champions. Justin will always be able to say that. So that's just where he's at. The field's getting good. It's getting better. And Justin's still good. He's still great. He still, I think, is amongst the top 10 out there. He's just not amongst the top 5 right now.
Yeah, not right now. And and that probably irks him too. So what it's going to do is it's going to cause him to kind of go back to the drawing board, him and his team, and figure it out. And he's got some of the best coaches when it comes to that. And some people is like, why haven't they done it yet? I'm like, I don't know. Well, but you're right. I think at some point, I just don't see. He's too young. He's too good to just dramatically drop down this far. From the peak, from being at the top. But we'll see. I think those are kind of outliers right now. More Patrick than Justin, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Then, right.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Then you want to talk about Yona?
Yeah, just talk about the birthday boy and the day he had.
Dude, that was so cool. I mean, I didn't know it was his birthday until breakfast yesterday. Some people were saying happy birthday to him, so we did so on the podcast as well. He comes out on his birthday morning, wins his heat. The whole crowd gets to do a birthday chant for him. Someone, I think, tipped off them, Lauren or the MC or something, that it might have been his birthday. And honestly, he had an amazing day. 4th, 9th, 8th to finish it up. He vaults back into 10th place overall. Minus last year where he had to withdraw after rolling his ankle in the first round. His 3 finishes at Rogue are 10, 11, 12. And, Roman, I saw a question about Roman, excuse me. Yona has been competing longer at the top of the sport than Brent or Pat. Like, he's not as old as them, but he's been competing at the games level longer than them since 2014. And to still get a top 10 finish in a series of events at a competition that you would say, Rogue's going to be tough for Yona compared to some of these guys. There's some big guys there. There was no heavy complex this year, but there's plenty of heavy implements. It was a big demand on the body. He hasn't been healthy, consistently in the last couple of years. And to fight on the last day, to do it on his birthday, to climb into that 10th spot, I was really happy for him. Tons of respect. And, it just kind of goes to show you that in this middle region on any given day, you never kind of know.
Yeah. And it's just great because, prior to this year, I would say this year, Yona was kind of known as like, oh, he's the swimming guy. He's the guy or the bike guy. He's gonna wear a leader's jersey at the games at one point, and it's usually after the first event. But what we've seen over the last year, and then unfortunately weren't able to see it fully this year. We saw a guy win the Open. We saw a guy who's just excellent.
He won the quarters.
Won the quarterfinals, and then he won the semifinals. He just it was one of those things where, like Pat, he just was ill or something was wrong, something was off. So we're kind of, and he would have said that this was his best year ever in terms of like his physical fitness. So for him to come out and finish 10th at this, it's a huge win for him because again, it is Rogue. This event is like not tailor made for someone like Yona, who's a small, if we did like the average height of the top 10, he would, he would fall. Like, I think he's probably smaller than Justin. Maybe weighs more than Jay, but overall, it's like he'd be the smallest.
There's some big dudes in that top 10.
And that's what Rogue is known for. It kind of favors the bigger guys, kind of mass moves mass type of thing. But came out, especially those last events. Those are events that typically, especially the last event where he finished 8th and at one point he was leading. It wasn't until he got into that final sandbag where he kind of just, and I think that he knew that. That's why he was so fast. He so fast because he's like, hey, I'm gonna slow down dramatically when I get to this last sandbag, and there is going to be some built-in rest for me only because, it's my NES is going to blow up, and but he still finished 8th, and it got that grouping for 8th was pretty tight too, so.
Let's take this question here. We're right at the middle of kind of looking through the men's leaderboard. Mm-hmm. How do you guys think Roman? He corrects himself. Roman would have done. Historically, Roman's been a top 5 guy at Rogue. He's I think he's a 5th and a 3rd. He's been a top 5 guy at the games. He hasn't been able to win the big event yet. He did win in Dubai, but some of the top guys weren't there. Ricky. Yeah. So I think if a healthy Roman is probably would have had another top 5 at the games and at Rogue this year. I don't think he would have won either one of them.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, he'd be top 5. I think he'd be right there slotted. He'd be fighting Dallin, I think. He would be. I don't think he'd be 50. I don't think he'd be 50 points behind Dallin, kind of like Jay was. But I think him and Dallin and Ricky would kind of be in that group together. He would have did really well in that. There's a couple workouts that he either would have won or finished top 2 or 3 in. I'm thinking about the rowing, the rowing workout he would have did really well in. The rope climb workout he would have did really well in too. I think he would have did fine in the pegboard too. Especially with the GHDs and the row and the skier. I think he would have did really well in that. I think he would have figured out the pegboard as well.
Yeah, I mean, look. Semifinals last season, he was a couple points behind Jeff. The year before that, he was in a dogfight with Jeff. He's going to be in the fight. It's hard to say and hard to say how those points would have distributed everything else on the leaderboard. Who wouldn't have been there if he was there also is a variable that's hard to predict, but it's hard to say that he wouldn't have been in the top 5. It's also difficult to see him winning or maybe even finishing second with the weekend that Brent had. So 3 through 5 is I feel like is a fair assessment of what he would have done.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the men's leaderboard for an hour, so I'm going to give you a bottom 10 here. Pick one name that you want to highlight.
Oh, geez. Let's go. Sorry, let me pull it up here. I was jumping on something else. Um, I want to let's talk about Jorge.
Absolutely, we can.
This is a guy, including myself, and I like to think I know Jorge pretty well. I mean, outside of like in terms of analysts and people that are in the sport, I have a relationship with him. I've seen him in action, and this is the Jorge, like, him to match his finish from the previous time he was at Rogue, and people looking at him as a team only athlete. Yes, he has yet to put it together like in a semifinal games format type of competition, but this is impressive. A lot of people picked him in the 19th and 18th region or area, which is, if you look at, that's a difference of almost 140 points or whatever, 120 points, 130 points. So he's 130 points better than what people predicted him to be, which is huge. So he finishes right there. He's slotted right behind Chandler, his a former training partner, and a guy who's well known at Rogue. And he didn't have any. He has a couple 19th finishes there, but he has a 5, a 7, and a 7 there too. So it was kind of cool. I wanted to recognize Jorge and just like great job. I mean, he has another competition coming up. We'll talk about. He's the top male athlete right now, announced for Asia Fitness Championships, which is another data point for him. And I think what he's going to do is he's going to take what he learned here. He's going to take it there, and what we're going to see is hopefully someone that just dominates there and wins. And that can go a long way for an athlete like him.
Yeah, excellent. And I'll just I think I'll choose here. Well, you know what? Let me ask you about James, because we had said we'd do that. And a lot of the other guys on the bottom of this list are older veteran athletes that sort of towards the end of their career. James obviously, was the champion this summer, came in here not having the perfect run up to the competition. And there was a massive range of picks of where people thought he would finish, which is understandable for a lot of different reasons. He's only 22. I think he's going to be lurking around the top 10. I'm not sure how high up in the top 10 he'll always end up being. I thought 11th was a pretty good finish. I mean, look, he had 3 bottom 4 finishes. He had 3 top 5 finishes. And I think that's not that surprising. I think if he was perfectly healthy, maybe another spot up on the leaderboard, maybe 2, but I actually think he kind of came pretty close to maximizing potential with these workouts against this field this weekend. Do you think he's a top 10 guy in the world right now?
Yeah, I do. Especially now. I mean, you say right now, today, is he a top 10 guy?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, do you think, like, if we were going to put out your rankings, these are the top 50 fittest guys on earth, would James be in the top 10?
He'd be top 10 because Brent's now out of the rankings.
But Roman would be in there.
Maybe.
Or would.
But
So,
would you say Guy is top 10?
Right, exactly. I think we agree on this. I think I'd rank him somewhere between 7 and 12. 7 and 12, is a range for sure. I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but I do think that I hope that people aren't looking at this and like absolutely berating him and saying this guy sucks. This guy doesn't have it. Like,
he's got 11th. 11th at Rogue is really good, especially. I'm a bigger James Sprague fan because of what he did because I had him ranked like 17th because he was sick, and for him to overcome that when other people, it's like, we use like, hey, we said like Vellner was kind of sick coming in. Freaking James had freaking pneumonia and traveled and still came, and he didn't come here to collect the paycheck. He came here to freaking, collect the paycheck, but collect as much of it as he can. And so bravo to him.
He's never traveled outside of the country before. He's never competed outside of the country before. Like this perspective, I like this guy, SPM. I wish I had met him this weekend, but this is the perspective that I think is responding to like some sort of anger at the fact that he won at the games this year. That's, I think, is displaced.
Yeah.
It was a perfect set of circumstances on one hand for him to actually win that, and it was great for his life and his financial perspective for the next couple of years. And on the other hand, it's kind of unfortunate because he had, he trains his ass off. He had a great performance. It ends up where he's in the top spot, and it almost made people hate him.
Yeah.
Like a group of people that are hating him. And I think what we're trying to do is to set aside anything emotional and all those other things and look at his individual performances over the last 3 times that we've seen him compete, which is semifinals, games, and Rogue, and say, nope, the total body of work here is reflective of a guy who's pushed into that bottom subset of the top 10 guys in the world right now. And I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that hate for James, just because they don't feel like he deserves it, the manner he does it, because he's very, very open about his faith and where God plays into it. And I hate saying that, but a lot of people just are turned off by that, especially in light of the games where people were kind of almost like demanding people like just hey uh, identify or just the whole tragedy around it, and James, kind of overcame that. And I think, that's just it's not fair. It's not fair that that people think that way because of who he is. I mean, I said it to you before. I think James Sprague is like the modern day Noah Olsen was, like all the hate Noah Olsen got like right at the beginning of his career because of all his positivity and stuff like that. People like they don't believe it. They think it's all fake. How can someone be that happy and positive or blah blah blah? But James is that way. Noah is that way. So
I'm just making a little list here. I think that if I was going to put out a list today of the top 10 guys on earth, I think I would have him 10th, based on what I just evaluated.
Yeah, I we're just one spot away from the one spot out of here because I mean Yona beat him in this competition, but I think 9 times out of 10 James probably beats Noah.
Yona, I'm not sure about that. I think that I would need to spend a little more time with it, but I think Yona is in that conversation of that 9, 10, 11, 12, and James is as well. Anyway, it's fun, and I am planning to do some rankings. I think I'm gonna wait till after Wadapalooza because by the time we get through there, we'll have this data set, which I think is valuable. Dubai, which would be valuable for a different group of athletes, most of whom would not be in the top. I don't think any of them are in the top 10 conversation, but a lot of those guys are in the maybe 15 through 35 conversation, which I think is a very fun place to evaluate as well. And then at Dubai, at Miami, in Miami, 4-tier Wadapalooza, we'll get another group of athletes. I think we'll see some of these guys compete again. And after that, I'll feel pretty good about actually assessing maybe the top 50 or 100 men. Let's look at the women, and let's start with Gabby. You had a chance to interview her last night, which was pretty cool. If you guys haven't watched it, it's a 21-minute interview, and I watched it. You did the interview. I watched it last night, and it made me really happy to see because she doesn't do a lot of interviews. She doesn't speak in public a lot. She talks about some of the way that she's isolated, some of the way that not isolated from everyone in the world, but isolated from the public, embraced her personal community around her, whether it's her family or the Krypton community that she's grown close with. And that she was, this weekend, even she was really letting her performance speak for her on the floor. And then, she was prevented from being able to finish that due to an injury. And she took an opportunity to say some things that I think will allow people to resonate with her at a personal level, that I think is important for both people who maybe don't understand her that well, but also important for her. And some of the stuff she said, I mean, it just was heartwarming to hear her say that those things and express thoughts about how she processes information. And again, 24 hours after like a really life-altering thing for her, she seemed really composed in the ability to express herself.
I kind of look at that interview as more of like therapy for her, because she talks about in the interview, like she couldn't sleep. She was constantly replaying that moment in her head, in her head. And I think having that opportunity to sit down and just talk to someone who's kind of nonpartisan, someone, obviously everyone knows I'm a Gabby fan, but the thing is, I'm also, a, you know, I kind of wanted to just get, help her and talk things out with her. And I think by the end of that interview, you can see that she was, she almost got that closure. Like, okay, all right, now that I've talked about it, I can move on and start thinking about the road ahead. I can stop replaying that moment in my head. And I think I saw that switch in the interview last night, and that's what I wanted to do. Because and I think that was the goal. I think that was ultimately the goal. I mean, I think her team, Josie and Emma, they saw that and they're like, hey, you can tell it. You're telling us all this stuff. Why don't you tell someone nonpartisan or put that out there and kind of it's almost like therapy. By all means, I'm not a therapist, but that's how I kind of went into that situation. I was like, you know what, I'm going to throw her some questions, let her opportunity for her to speak her mind. And like you said, she doesn't do a lot of interviews. We've known her for a while, and a lot of it had to do with, she didn't trust her English very well, but she's gotten really good at that in expressing herself, expressing her emotions. And at certain times, I had to I felt like I was maybe coaching her or putting words in her mouth. So I had to step back a little bit, but only because, I'm like, she knows what she's talking about. She knows how to convey those thoughts. But no, it was, I'm extremely proud of her. I'm really interested, just like everyone else, to see what this process is for her. And it's going to be hard. And she recognized that. I don't know if she truly knows how hard it's going to be, but the thing is, she's going to have her family. She's going to have the Krypton team. She's going to have everyone backing her up, the community. And like I said, that comeback is going to be something amazing.
I got a few questions from people about it. Did she withdraw from the competition? Why is she still on the leaderboard? And I looked back at the history of Rogue. It's actually kind of amazing. There's been very, very few athletes that have withdrawn from Rogue, other than like really early in the competition, like we mentioned with Yona last year. The last time that there was an athlete who didn't finish a competition at Rogue that had enough points to finish anywhere better than last was Lucas Hogberg in the very first year. And the rules were different then. I mean, Laura and Marco Alvarez actually got disqualified from the competition for minimum work requirement or failure to meet a minimum work requirement. Lucas withdrew and he dropped down to 19th. There's been a change, not just at Rogue, it appears, but also at the games, which was publicized, that if you withdraw from the competition, you get to, Vellner made a post on Instagram. That would be, we'll check that out. Thank you, sweetie. Sweetie Pippi, always helping us out. That if you withdraw from a major competition now, it appears that you get to keep your points that you've earned up to that place, and then you get to, therefore get the reward for finishing wherever those points end up yielding you by the end of the competition. I don't mind that. And in this case, it ends up being she is going to get between $19,000 and $20,000 for the efforts through 2/3 of the competition. They got her those points instead of getting the kind of $6,000 payoff that everyone gets here. So that's why she's still on the leaderboard, and it is a relatively unique scenario at Rogue, actually. Thanks for the coverage. Got home last night for my weekend at Aberdeen. Brilliant weekend. Great to have a big European event here. Hope there are more to follow. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I should call you Charlotte. We're going to talk about the athletes mostly, but this is not something that should be understated. And especially as we have spent a decent amount of time in Europe, and we have been trying to shed light on how great the athletes initially were, and now as we've learned more about it ourselves, the community is in Europe. What Rogue did this weekend for the European CrossFit and fitness community is amazing. If I could say one thing to Bill and Katie, it would be congratulations and thank you. I cannot tell you the number of people who I personally know from my travels around Europe and the Middle East to these competitions that have never thought they'd have a chance to attend an event like this in person, because it's never happened in Europe before. It's never happened outside of the United States before. And I mean, every day there were people coming up to me. They're like, "Hey, remember I met you at this place, whatever." And I would never. People said this to me. I would never have been able to travel to Madison or to Texas or to West Coast Classic or even Wadapalooza to watch these kinds of competitions. But this is a 2-hour flight from my home country. It was announced far enough ahead of time. Me and some friends booked these tickets and came here. And this was the best experience that we've ever had watching these athletes that I never thought I'd see in person. Katie and Bill, you guys made that possible, and it means a lot to me that you did.
Well said. I'm not gonna. Yeah, well said. But Gabby, I think, yeah.
Let's go through the women's leaderboard. I don't care how long this show really goes.
Yeah.
Tia and Laura. I do have an article coming out about Tia and Laura, but we can talk about it here without the article being published. They've won all of the events, and they've won every Rogue Invitational between the two of them. The article is going to be called "The Queens of Rogue." Their history as Rogue are a little bit different. I'll go through it in the article there. But as far as this weekend goes, 4 straight for Tia, 4 straight for Laura. Tia gets a little bit of revenge in the final after Laura beat her in the final last year to win it. And we talked about it with Alexis and Carolyn. We set the bar at 7. Could they win 7 combined events? I don't know.
Yeah.
And Alexis goes, I think they'll win 7, 8, or 9. And we were like, or 9? You don't think anyone else is going to win a single one? And she was right.
Yeah, that's why we need to have her on more. But gosh, I mean, it wasn't a race between those two. I'm sorry, it wasn't. I mean, yeah, the first two, but it was Tia the whole way through. I mean, the out of that 8, everything else was a second to Laura, and then Laura, she had 4 third, and another 4th, and then of course that 14th. It's just like, again, once Gabby dropped out, it was or what left or had to withdraw. It really hurt Laura actually. Not saying that Gabby wouldn't finish second, but she didn't have that person in the middle to put more separation between her and Tia. Now would she have been put separation between her and Tia in the events that she won? I don't know. Because at that point Laura was chasing Gabby, not Tia. But then it wasn't really of a chase after that. So, but
I just want to read a couple stats about Tia here. These will be in the article if you want to check out the full thing. We'll post it later today. She's competed 5 of the 6 years at Rogue. There's been 40 total events in the 5 years that she's competed there. She's won 17 of them, finished second place on 11 of them. 70% of a total events she started at Rogue, she's finished first or second. That leaves 12 events. 6 of the other 12 were top 5 finishes. The other ones that weren't, 4 of them were 6, 7, 8, and only 2 times has she been outside of the top 8 on any single event that she's done at the Rogue Invitational over 5 years.
I wonder who won those other events that she didn't win. You said the 12. I wonder how many of those Laura won.
Laura's won. It's in the article as well. Laura has. She's won 11 events out of 28 that she's competed at. That's over the last 3 years. She's won 11 out of 28 events.
Yeah,
she's done 49 total events.
Yeah. So Tia, you take away take away the year that she wasn't competing against Tia. I wonder how many of those are against Tia. So,
in Tia's career at Rogue, there's been 4,000 points available. She's earned 3,571. That's 89% of total points available have gone her way.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. There was a couple comments in the reviews that Lucy and I were doing, or the recaps after the events, that said, you need to celebrate Tia more. You need to recognize greatness, dominance, whatever. And I'm one of those people that during the actual event, believe me, I'm aware of it during the competition. But I like this to point out some of the other things. But when a weekend ends like this, and you look back and you see that there were 9 events, and she won 5 of them, and she took second 3 times, and the 8th place was on an event that I consider to be largely irrelevant compared to the rest of the events when it comes to fitness. It was the dual event. It's beyond impressive. It's somewhat scary. It's the stuff of legend. I mean, she is everything that people are saying about her and more. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, just think a couple years we thought she was retired from the sport, and now she looks better than ever. She has new goals now, and and she's the only limiting factor in her accomplishing those goals. I don't I don't see another woman in this field right now, even with Gabby healthy, that can beat her, or will beat her. So I don't know how
No,
much
and
else.
it's like it's fun. It's fun to kind of stir up the drama. You say like, "Hey, Gabby was only a few seconds behind her here, a few seconds
Yeah,
behind her there," but you always wonder. Like we talked about it with Guy. Those are on the first two events. If you're Tia, you don't need to be winning those events by 10 minutes, by a minute, by 30 seconds. You just take the win and move on.
yeah.
You need to conserve some energy for the rest of it. Appreciate you, Kevin. Gotta go, coach. Hell yeah, man. Coach those people up. So Tia, league of her own. Laura, absent of Gabby in the competition, clearly the second best woman there. And then we had, I think, really the race that we were projecting. We both had Alex, Ariel in that next kind of spot. Brooke had a great weekend. Emma had a great weekend. Danny Spiegel had an incredible weekend. But it came down to the final day. It was a back and forth kind of slugfest between Ariel and Alex. Uh, Alex got the better of her by a considerable margin in the morning. Ariel flipped the script in the middle of the day, stealing back most of those points. And it pretty much came down to the final. When you look at sandbags on the floor, we had it kind of, I'd asked Lucy, and she goes, both those women are strong. Like this, it's going to be tough. And, Ariel, I don't know what to say about her anymore. I mean, it's different than Tia, obviously, but it's been 3 years now that she just keeps doing impressive things. I think she keeps almost surprising herself, and she's doing it in ways that nobody else is doing it. She's coaching herself from her house.
Yeah.
What? Like, come on. How is she doing this?
I just think I think there's a switch in her. I think she's present. That's what it is. She's just super aware of everything. Whereas you have some athletes that are just super focused on one singular thing, like Tia. Tia's like a shark. It's like she smells blood in the water, she attacks, she goes. And I think Ariel is just so, like even during the competition, like she's aware. Like she can hear. She'll recognize Dylan and her friends over there talking during competition. And I think that's just what it is. Like I think that's what it. She turns off her brain to thinking how hard this is, and then just like I just need to finish this. I think that's what it is. I mean, that's just what I've seen. My observations where she's not thinking about like the actual the competition. She's thinking about just finishing it and then letting the results fall in place. Like she's not worried. She's not looking at the leaderboard. She's not worried about that. She's like, I'm just going to go out there and do my best. You know, just kind of like a
Well,
parent's like,
she,
I don't, it's not about winning. It's about going out there and having fun and doing your best. And I know a lot of people hate that because they're like, oh no, we're not teaching people the right things in society and blah blah blah. But she's lives that. She's like, I'm just going to go out there and have fun and do my best. And doing that gives her third place.
well, and if you have been paying attention to the things that she's been saying over the last year, when she's like her media presence has elevated. She's
Hmm.
done her own media. Aaron has worked with her to produce some media. They're going to have some good stuff coming out later this week or next week as well. I'm sure of it because she was following around. She's with her now in Edinburgh, and Ariel has said some things that I think a lot of athletes, people who are aspiring to be great athletes and have the type of success that she's had, should really, really hone in on. I saw her last night in the hotel and I said, Ariel, look how strong you've got. Like what you did against Dia in the lifting event at SoCal and what you just did with those sandbags. And she's like, I know, right? Those sandbags, like who knew it? But what has she said about her strength? And by the way, she's genuinely that excited about it. She's
Hmm.
excited for what she did because she doesn't test her top end strength that often. She's built that base. She knows how to use her body. She knows how to use that um, the efficiency of technique that is the baseline. That's
Yeah.
what you need to do. I get concerned when I see athletes, male or female, that are between 16 and 25 even that are lifting massive weights and I like, ooh, that doesn't look great. Like that is not sustainable. Do not do that.
Yeah.
Like, you got to build a base of strength over time. You have to put in that work at that 80% level, 85% level frequently, even 70, 75%. Get a shitload of amazing reps, strong technique at that place, and save your opportunities. In that same interview that Fraser did, where he said, ask me anything, he said, I would set my cycles for max back squat that would end at competitions. And if they didn't test the back squat in competition, I didn't test my 1 rep max back squat.
No. Save it for another day. Put it in the
I don't
pocket.
think a lot of people are doing that. I think there's a lot of people that I got this competition coming up here. I'm going to do a strength cycle and max out, a strength cycle and max out, and a strength cycle and max out, and then I'll taper and hit it. But that's not how the greatest who's ever done it did it. And Ariel Lowen's not the greatest who's ever done it. But my goodness, if you want to talk about someone who's made the most out of her situation in terms of parlaying that into impressive performances and results, she's right up there. And that's something that she's spoken about. So, like, pay attention to that for those of you that are like on the fringe, on the come up, wanting to be great at this stuff.
Yeah, it's really easy for people to kind of put Ariel in that kind of, Lucas Holberg category. It's like, oh, podium once, blah blah blah. But no, she keeps on consistently doing it. And for her to finish on the podium at Rogue, which is again not what you would think. Rogue isn't typically made for someone like her, but she keeps on impressing us and impressing herself, and it's amazing and it's great.
Want to give a shout out to Alex. You know Alex really well. Look at the first day. Look at the last 2 days. That's a Brazilian athlete right there.
Yeah, it's totally different. I think again, we'll talk about the mental side here. She had a rough day one. She had a couple things that didn't go away that really upset her. I mean, she was on the verge of tears. I think she actually was in tears over something, miscommunication with her judge that kind of led to a really bad finish for her. And what she do? She woke up on day 2 and just a 4th, 7th, 6th, a third, and then the 13th, which is fine. It can happen. And then finishes with the 6th. But she was there. She was in that 3rd spot going into that final event, and it just happened that it was she didn't have enough cushion there, especially as someone as good as Ariel. And the thing is, her and Ariel have such a good relationship. They've gone back and forth in a lot of events that they've participated, whether it be the semifinals. But man, I was happy for her. I know it wasn't the result that she wanted at the end. It was a podium, but this is now the highest finish she's ever had in a competition.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I was joking with her last night, because there was a couple years ago where I picked her in like the 20s and she finished 5th at the games, and we have this picture where we're all holding up 5, and there was kind of like, making fun of me and celebrating her at the same time. And I did pick her in the top 5 this year, but she's in the 4th spot, and we said, let's just keep climbing the way up there. And she has, talking with her and Justin Kotler last night, like, she's motivated by that. She thinks she could have done better in that final, and it's of the mindset that I could have approached it differently. I could have had a little more urgency. I could have had this, and there's always a little turning once you're that good. There's always a little turning point. I think we're going to see it from Luka Jukic later this year, where he's kind of like, no, I'm competing with a different purpose now, and that's a totally different scenario. You never know what's going to flip the switch for an athlete, but from what I saw in Alex and talking to Justin, I think she's kind of ready for that, to take that next step and say, no, I'm not coming here to take 5th anymore. And I'm not coming here to just go through this workout. So I'm curious to see how that transitions to the next few times that we see her in competition. But I think that, she's still super young, and I think her potential, top potential, is still a little bit unknown. But if she makes that next switch mentally, that, we can see those podium finishes in her future.
Yeah, I think you kind of brought it up there towards the end of that statement there. But I think the next evolution is she has all the talent that she's young. But I think what will separate her and put her at that next level is the execution. A couple of those performances there came down to execution, and she'll get that. And she has the best coach. She has one of the best coaches to help her with the execution part. So that's just something that it'll learn. She'll gradually learn. Either through just trials and just doing execution exercises, instead of worrying about a workout, full set of workout, just working on some execution parts of a workout. So she'll get better. I want to talk about number 5, Brooke Wells. I've said it before. Like I said, I picked her originally as 4th. You know, I think she should have finished better at that because, I think what I said is like, I think that she's one of the athletes built for like road programming. Um, and if it wasn't really for that dual event, which she doesn't have much experience in duels, she's only competed in the 2019 Rogue where they didn't have the duel, and we know that she's a fast twitch muscle athlete. I think if she would have gotten past that initial round, I think she would have had a higher place. I think she would have figured out because that workout really was a sprinty workout that included deadlifts, and there's probably not a better deadlift athlete out there outside of Danny Spiegel in this field. So I really want to just give some props to Brooke, and then later I'll give props to Sydney as well. But Brooke, I mean, what a performance for her! She's been around the sport for so long, over 10 years. And I still think this is the best version of Brooke Wells, but we've been unfortunate because of unfortunate circumstance. We haven't fully seen it.
Yeah. No, I think it's great call by you to put her there. It wasn't that wasn't the only event where she had something kind of unfortunate go. Then Sunday morning on the pegboard, she had a couple misses, which can be super costly. It's hard to say exactly how costly, and there were big gaps on the women's side. But yeah, she's put herself back in that mix. I think she can walk away from this weekend feeling a renewed sense of confidence that she's sort of right back to where she was 3 years ago. When she hurt her elbow, she was, on track for another top 5 finish at the games, and she still has that potential to be a top 5 in any field, regardless of who's showing up. So it's good. It's always great, to have another athlete that is throwing their name back into that mix. And, if a competition comes where she does have a perfect execution, she should have the belief that just like the girls that ahead of her that we talked about, that a podium is within reach for someone like her.
Yeah.
This next section of leaderboard here, it makes me happy to see all the flags on the leaderboard. You got Emma Tall there. We'll talk about Danny Spiegel, Gabby. We've talked about Manon, who had another good performance 3 years in a row that she's been, I think now 11th, 10th, 9th. And Maddie Sturt. You see Emily Rolfe, Canadian flag there. It was one of the things that I was really happy about in terms of having this, that Pinky Deborah is saying in Europe, is that these countries that have these superstars, these role models, the leaders of their communities at the top of the sport, getting a chance to compete on this stage. And we have a flurry of different flags inside the top 10. I love seeing it. And I mean, big respect to all the women here in this list. But, even though she's not international, and even though it does look on paper like Rogue should be good for her, I didn't see a 7th place finish coming for Danny Spiegel.
I didn't either. And I think even knowing the workouts, but I mean, what a last day for her. She definitely earned it. I remember right before that last event, I came over to her. I'm like, I think Danny Spiegel just put herself into that final heat, and that final heat has freaking sandbag cleans. I'm like, this is going to be impressive for her. And what did she do? I mean, she was leading that whole final thing until Tia just kind of took charge of, just cycled those sandbags a little bit faster than she did. But good job by Danny. I told her that last night as she was leaving. It's like you said, you mentioned with Ariel that they're in Edinburgh right now, and that it's kind of being fallen around. Well, Danny's with her, so this should be a really good video. Her and Danny, visiting the sites of Edinburgh, and also visiting Harry Potter World. So it should be very interesting to see that.
That's what she said last night. She goes, "There's Harry Potter shit I got to go see."
Exactly. I'm like, you're leaving already, and that's exactly what she said. It was awesome.
I should tell Danny, man. I wonder if she'd be any good at the trivia game, the Harry Potter trivia game that I made. That would be fun to find out.
Yeah, would be.
I'll tell you who's not good at it is Jason.
But Jason would say that he's good at it, but he would claim that.
No. He knows. Whenever we tried, he's like, "Listen, bro, I can't remember names and stuff like that. I could tell you the plot."
Yeah. But great job by Danny. I mean, I look back at that, and I look at that first event and her finishing 18th in a running event, and I still look at that. I'm like, that's impressive for her.
It's
Just kind
more
of
to
like
me, it's not
last.
even about the place. It's just about like I was
Yeah,
watching her run and she looked more
yeah,
comfortable running over long distance of times than she has most of the time that she's done that in her career.
yes,
And it's got to feel
yes.
good. She's struggled with some feet and ankle stuff over the years, and she
Mhm.
hasn't let that stand in her way. She's continued to try to find ways. Look, she doesn't put a lot of fitness stuff out there on the internet. She puts other stuff out there on the internet. Some people love it. A lot of people love it. Some people
Yes.
take exception with it. But you cannot show up at a competition like this and do what she did if you're not also working your ass off in the gym regularly.
Hmm. And again, you can't say she's not fit. The girl is obviously fit. She's just not. She just doesn't fall in your definition of fit, or whoever is criticizing her on her fitness. We had a couple long events, and she did well in them. So good
And
good
it's
job.
and it's cool. It's cool that you can have success in this sport and it doesn't look the same way all the time. The bodies don't look the
Yes,
same. The trajectories on the leaderboard over the course of a competition don't look the same. The skill sets aren't necessarily the same. The technique's not always the same.
and
And we could say the
yeah,
same thing on the men's side. There's a lot
and
of
how
ways
you
to get it done.
approach the sport may not be the same because she gets a lot of criticism, and it's like I'm not. She gets a lot of criticism saying I'm not a professional CrossFitter. I mean, she's very outspoken on that in terms of being a professional and the money in the sport and her to maintain a career doing this. But yet, at the end of the day, she still shows up to these competitions. She still does them. She does well in most of them. And at the same time, she's having fun. She's interacting with the fan. It's really easy. And that's one thing. It's like, yeah, I think I look back at it now, you know, the interaction every athlete had with the fans, like them signing, taking selfies, like you saw it that last day where as soon as they finished they finished the race, fans were coming down there and they're handing off their phones and they embraced it. It was great to see the athletes fully embrace being ambassadors of fitness and they look like
I think that is very, very true. I actually think it's a potential learning point for Rogue in a new environment. They had
yes.
a system set up that allowed for a lot of athlete privacy and coach privacy. So they were in the back of house, they came out behind the rig, and they got off behind the rig. Athletes' best opportunity to interact with the fans was if they finished first in their heat and the rest of the athletes were working out for a while, and then they could sign shirts and take pictures and do whatever. They were encouraging the athletes to get off the floor pretty quickly to keep
Mhm.
things going within the schedule and the time frame that they had. But there's other ways to do it. It's a new venue, and I was just like brainstorming. There's another exit. Like you could reconfigure that and send the athletes out a different way that they came in and put
Yeah.
them into um, this okay, Charlotte. It's in her Instagram stories, not in her posts. Thank you. You could put them out to have it exit a different way, where there's a area on one side for for fans to line up and do that with the athletes. That's out of the way, and for athletes who want to spend some time there, they can. And then they could also turn left and go back to the back of house for athletes who are not in the good frame of mindset, or that's not their thing, or they want to get straight to their cool down or their coach or whatever to do that too. So I mean, Rogue hit on 99% this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're looking for small areas to improve, I would be paying attention that there were a lot of athletes who actually were seeking out those opportunities with the fans. And one of the best times to do that is right after they compete. And there wasn't a great layout for that.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how it was at the games this year because I pretty much lost the capacity to pay attention to anything. But
Sure.
in Madison, when they left, there was a long walk and there were
Yeah.
several areas where fans
Beer
knew they could
garden.
go and they could say,
Yeah.
"Hey, Ariel, hey, Dallin," or whoever they wanted. And the athletes always have the prerogative to just keep walking, but a lot of them will stop and do something. And sometimes athlete control will say, "Hey, we got to go, we got a briefing or whatever," and they'll say, "Sorry,
Yeah.
guys." The athletes want to do that, and I think that there's a little bit. This venue has a lot of versatility. I would not be surprised if they came back here if there was a different layout for exiting off the floor that gave a chance for the athletes who want to do more fan interaction.
Yeah, Madison allowed that when they did it. When Rogue did it at Dell Diamond, they had a little bit of that as well. I think they will figure it out, but I think one thing they will keep in mind is athlete safety as well. So,
Yep.
that's the most important thing is athlete safety and something like that, because there could be some situations that might occur, and that you want to avoid that as much, mitigate that as much as possible. You
And
mentioned.
I know that like the top priority for Rogue, for Priel and Katie, is the athletes,
Yeah.
and that's amazing, because when the athletes are having a great time, what does that mean? They want to come back, and guess what?
Yes.
Everyone wants to see the best athletes compete. This is an environment where every athlete, it's a dream to be here, and
Mhm.
part of that is because you see athletes like Laura, Chandler, Pat, Tia, that have done like almost all of these things. They're coming back for a reason. And even listen to what Gabby said in her interview yesterday. I had such an amazing time here. Henrik
Yes.
Eppelainen told me the same thing when I talked to him. There's not a single athlete that's going to tell you they didn't have a good time here and they didn't feel like they were the top priority of the organizers. And because of that, everybody else has a great time too, whether it's the judges, the volunteers, the fans, the spectators, the vendors, the media. So that's a great, and quite frankly, I think that a lot of people would say that's a stark contrast to some other organizations that have struggled. And Rogue has a lot of resources. They have a small amount of athletes, so it's maybe easier to do that. But I've often encouraged big competitions, and sometimes people are like, no, I don't want it to just be about them. It's like, no, it is different for them. There's like 1,000 to 10,000 people that are coming to these competitions that want their attention. You have to consider that those people differently, and Rogue does a great job of it.
Hey, pick an athlete, talk about them. I gotta do something. I gotta put the do not disturb on the door.
Again, yeah, we were mentioning this whole weekend that there's these couple athletes that came from Australia to compete here. Tia's the obvious one. Jay and Maddie have been training partners with her. They've been in the proven kind of programming and community there for a while. And Jay bumped all the way up to 6th there. Maddie ends up finishing 10th. It was pretty tight, only a few points behind both Gabby and Manon there. But I think that similarly to Jay, this was an opportunity for her in an environment where they, quite frankly, they probably had the least amount of fans because they're really far away from home. All the European athletes had this tremendous support. Most of the North American athletes are pretty well known at this point. And they just stuck their nose down there, fought, and got it done. She didn't have the greatest finish of a competition. For last 4 finishes, 3 of them outside of the top there. But I was proud of Maddie, and I think that she had a 4-year run at the game. She had a few years where she didn't make it. A lot of people kind of had forgotten about her. So to see her put her nose back out there and be competitive against women like this, I mean, look at the girls right behind her. DB, huge following, superstar athlete. Emily Rolfe coming off a 3rd place at the games this year, and Maddie Sturt's finishing right ahead of both of them. She hasn't taken the step to be solidly in the top 10 yet, but she's just lurking outside of there. And I think this was a probably her best performance on the biggest stage yet in her career. I was talking about Maddie.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I'm really impressed by her. She's kind of really turned the table in terms of her fitness and career, and you definitely saw that that Tia kind of taken her under her wing. And I mean, what better mentor to have someone like that? Is like, I mean, she's still like Jay, a relatively young but very experienced Australian, and we'll see. We'll see if she ends up making a move. Her and Jay, I know it's a big push for them to come over and train with her, I'm sure they want to train as much as they can with her. So I don't know if they'll make the move at some point or come here for like they did last year, an extended period of time to train to get ready for whatever season that they do. Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah,
We were asking people about this last night. I don't know what the maximum capacity in that building was, but the attendance number was equivalent to the maximum capacity in the building.
Yeah.
I didn't see any empty seats in the balcony regions. I saw people standing the entire time. People were constantly trying to stand down by the finish lines, and the venue accommodated the number of people well. The bathrooms there are huge. There was I thought there was a bunch of urinals, and then there was a whole nother room of urinals behind there. There were some bathrooms off to the sides. The concession stands, there were like 50 stalls to order concessions at. So there were never lines that were crazy, and I didn't have to wait in a line. When the times that I went up to get food, I was like, oh, I could just walk up there and order. So it was.
Come to B.Friendly Fitness for your venue bathroom reviews.
Hey man, all of these little things.
I know, because you're always in a hurry, and it's like, whether it's getting food or whatever, because it's always like you have to be somewhere at a certain time. So you want to, I totally get it. It's funny, but
There's a ton of variables when putting in competitions, but at West Coast Classic this year, there was 2 spots to order food. There were lines that looked like they were 30 to 60 minutes long, and I didn't eat because of that. Or I went sneak into HWPO's box and be like, yo, Keith, man, do you guys have any food in here? Because I can't wait for an hour in this line.
Yeah.
You want the optimal scenario is that all the groups of people that come to your competition are having a good experience. And there's just basic human needs that people have: sleep, food, bathrooms, water. They had filling stations for the water that were constantly being refreshed and replenished out in the lobby area. Like, it's really easy to let those things slide by the wayside. They do a really good job of this venue, and then Rogue selecting this venue did a really good job of, I think, making the on-site experience great for all those groups of people. The vendors killed it, dude. There was a very exclusive and selective group that got to be there. It was in an appropriate location relative to the venue, and every time I went in there, all the stalls were swarming with people.
Yeah, and they're gonna, man. If you're a brand and you're a vendor, you're gonna be jockeying for spots or space there. Like you said, limited selective slots there. And Bravo, I don't know if they can expand that section. I don't think they can, because then it'd be expanded into the volunteer area that they have set up next to it. But if anyone can figure out, it's freaking Rogue. They'll figure it out.
The volunteer area was amazing. The media room was amazing. They, like I said, they hit a home run on 99%, and in year 1 at a venue, it's pretty impressive to do that.
Oh, we did. We didn't talk about, but I do want to give that VIP experience the night before, I thought was really cool. It was really awesome. That was really cool. I know you got there a little bit late, but it was well ran. They kind of sent people up in waves, that way they just didn't have one giant gathering of people. They did a good job with the tours. I didn't go on the tour because I'd gotten it with the media one, but I heard the tours were really cool, because for each tour they had a volunteer take them around, show them like different parts of the arena, what it was going to be used for, the vendor village, stuff like that. But they also had a legend or two that would have come with them in that group, so they would have an opportunity to kind of walk and talk with Josh Bridges or Margot Alvarez or Kristen Clever. It was really cool. And then the actual interaction up there, they had that drawing. I'm now proud owners of Crocs because of the drawing. I've never owned a pair of Crocs in my life, but now I am completely sold on them.
Did you get a size that actually fits you?
I did that morning. The next day, I went up there, and it was so funny because Bill, the next day, he's like, I told him, like, I was able to trade it on. He's like, oh, good, because I didn't think that was a little too small for you. But
otherwise, you're going to be wearing them on your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Dogs.
Well, I could give Mary Use. Apparently, Mary Use is a size 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, that VIP experience is really cool. We, like I said, it was really low key.
And look, I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only one who appreciated the toilet.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Congrats. Yeah. Next, come here for your toilet paper review. 2-ply versus 3-ply. But yeah, it was
the
really
ones
cool.
in the hotel that I'm at are actually.
Yeah. But back to the athletes. We talked about Maddie Sturt. Emily Rolfe finished 3rd at the games. Neither of us were I don't know if I picked her in this area. I think I had her, Haley, and Sydney kind of in this range, like 10 through 12, 10 through 13.
Yeah, I think I had her 11th. I think we both had her right about here. And it's, look, it's so interesting to me. And it's, the difference between winning and second or winning and third is accentuated in so many different ways. But how many people have you heard show any kind of criticism or the way that they have towards James Sprague, towards Emily Rolfe for finishing 3rd at the games? Yeah. Have you heard anybody say, no way, Emily Rolfe's not the 3rd fittest center?
Yeah.
But
no, that's true.
If you look at their relative performances in all the other competitions, and then that one, it's the same thing as the 2019 games.
Yeah.
And I, the athletes can't do anything about this, but but Noah Olsen took second in 2019. Kristen Holter took second in 2019, and people were like, "Well, you know, that's
They're
that's different."
yeah.
And then you can look at other people in the top 10. Matt McLeod, he had a 7th place, and he's never done anything else ever since then. And it's like, or before then, and we can look at that and say, yeah, something's not right there. Like that's not, it is what it is. But we should learn from that and understand. Okay, we have to assess those performances that year differently. Just like we can look at Brent Fikowski's 23rd that year, or Sarah Sigmundsdottir's 26th, or all these other athletes that were getting cut, Laura Horvath, Brooke Wells, Annie Thorsdottir, Pat Vellner, whatever, and say, yeah, the systems let down the athletes after the top spot that season, and circumstances allowed for athletes to have performances and finishes this year at the games that are not normal relative to what they do in other events. And it's, we're friends with James, obviously. We're friends with a lot of the athletes, but the amount of criticism that he's taken when you have another athlete, and look, Emily Rolfe's been getting better her whole career, and she's the oldest athlete in the field, and she's amazing. But she's not the third best woman on earth. Nobody thinks she's the third best woman on earth, and nobody's giving her a hard time about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And so that's why we haven't done a ranking system after the games. That's why we're waiting to see things like this, because this is much more indicative of where we would expect Emily to be. Now, you go to Wadapalooza, maybe she does a little bit better because this testing is a little bit different. Maybe she's 8-9 instead of 11-12. But we're not picking her on the podium, depending on the field. And that's
but
okay.
Emily typically does well in off-season comp. I mean, she's done Dubai, she's done other competitions in off-season. She usually finishes on the podium. So that might have a little bit to do with it because Emily is so well traveled and she does other competitions. And I also think Emily also is less.
She finishes on the podium, but not against these athletes.
Yeah, but she still finishes on the podium. But I also think it comes down to again her profile. She keeps kind of low key profile. Where James is not that. James is more. He commands attention when he's in the room. Where Emily isn't. Emily's like, no, I don't want to be that person. Yeah. I mean,
that's fair to say. He brings it upon himself a little bit. That's fair.
Yeah, and Emily does. And I mean, if anything, if you're hearing anything loud revolving around Emily, it's because of Kyle screaming at her. Go faster!
I love that guy.
I love Kyle.
He's so awesome.
For him to arrange for his buddy that proposal was amazing. There was that was awesome seeing that. I was able to meet his friend. I forgot his name, but I met him that first day, and yeah. But it's been like 3 months in the work. But that's the type of person Kyle is. By the way, Kyle's doing his first competition this year. He's been training, so I'm really interested to see.
Right.
Yeah. But go. Emily, I was really impressed how she finished. She finished that sandbag complex or the workout in 9th, and I thought that was really cool. Really impressive by her.
No, we talked about her after day one. We talked about Emily after day one. That 11th place on the back squats, strict handstand push-ups, the 9th place on the sandbags. Like those are the wins in competition that often go overlooked by a lot of people that are probably some of the most meaningful to her, Kyle, her team of people. I don't think that there's anything wrong with this 12th place finish. In fact, I think there's several workouts where she probably made herself really proud of the work that they've been putting in.
Yeah.
And she was doing a full-time job last
Exactly.
Last week time.
She was the last one to get here. She has to go back to work. She's running out of comp days. Paige finishing 13th. I had a little bit higher. She had some, nothing really stood out. I mean, she ended day 5. Obviously, the dual. She's becoming one of those athletes again. When you put her in a dual format, where it's just like just pure athleticism, she's going to do very well in. Really, I mean, she finished 15th on the pegboard workout, which I thought she did a lot worse than that. It was not looking good for her at one point. Her and Ariel. Let me look up there. What did Ariel finish on the pegboard? 11th.
I think she.
But I was sitting in the box.
Salvaged it moderate. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was sitting in the box with Dylan, and we're watching that. and he was like, man, he's like, because she put a post that they bought a pegboard and they practiced some, but it was just a different format there. And and I told her, I'm like, once she figures it out, she's gonna be fine. And she figured it out, and then after that, she was great. She was great once she figured it out. And I think that's what it took Paige a while. And I think while Paige was trying to figure it out, she burned out her forearms. It was really noticeable. They're very similar to kind of like what happened with Brooke. Brooke came out, but I think what Brooke just burnt out a little bit faster, whereas Paige burnt out while trying to figure it out. So, but overall, I think Paige, she's great job by her. Sydney Wells, I picked her 10th. I still think her finishing 14th. I think this is kind of where you had her, right?
Yes, maybe a couple spots lower. But
Yeah.
I was impressed with Sydney. And if you look at her event finishes, those two last place finishes are both on workouts with muscle ups, ring muscle ups, and log muscle ups.
Yeah.
It's a known weakness of hers. It showed up twice in 9 events. She took dead last on that against one of the best fields she's ever going to compete against.
Mhm.
The other bad finish that she had was on the dual. Like I said, it's the event of the weekend that personally, from an overall fitness perspective, I'm putting the least amount of emphasis on. I don't hold that bad finish against any of the athletes at Rogue. Across the board from there was 11th and better. She had a couple heat wins. She was battling with Danny Spiegel in the first 2 events of the last day. She was really impressive at the end of day 1 on the wall complex and back squats. And I think, absent of the ring muscle ups, or the muscle ups in general here, we are seeing Sydney clearly continuing to improve and still not at her peak capacity.
No, not at all. Like I said, she's getting stronger. And a lot of people would say there's no way she's gonna, do that well in that back squat event. I'm like, that girl squats. That girl, she does a lot of work. I mean, she's good. And once she figures out the whole muscle up thing, it's funny. I watched a video on Amy Kringle, and I think Sydney Wells, she has the potential to be like an Amy Kringle, but Amy Kringle was the same way.
Oh, yeah.
She was not good at muscle ups, but then now she's turned into herself where she's fairly decent at them. It just takes lot of hard work, and just proper keys and proper movement. Just having the right thing, and hopefully they can figure that out. I know Shane's worked tirelessly with her to try to make that a strength, and she's gotten so much better. Whereas, I remember when she was at West Coast Classic, when I think she only was able to get 2 or 3, and now, yeah, she's finishing last, but at least she's improved on that. But I think Sydney's someone to keep an eye on. I think if she would have made it to semifinals, I think she would have done really well at this year's games, based on the programming. Very similar again to what like Amy Kringle did. I think that's a pretty good comparison. Do you want to talk about Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there were things about this weekend that Amanda feels that she could have done better, but to me, this is a win for her. Like we said, she got the invite 3 months, less than that, before the competition. She's been coming back from an injury that seemingly been more difficult to recover from than she expected. I don't think that she knew. I don't think that we knew exactly what we would see from her. Like, she has a history of being competitive for the top 10. She wasn't that this weekend, but she had some top 10 finishes. She had some great performances in her heat. And I would feel really proud of this weekend if I was Amanda Barnhart.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been a minute. Like I said, she didn't have the best semifinals. Had some struggles there. Dealing with some injuries. But like I said, just looked like a very more athletic Amanda. And it looked like a happy Amanda too. Obviously she came there with really no expectations. No, just what I mean. I'm sure she had personal expectations, but no one kind of. But she looked good. She looked really good out there. She looked like Amanda from 2-3 years ago. Talking to her coach Josh, he was really happy. And, I asked him if she was happy. He's like, yeah, she was really happy. So that's really cool. Before we move on just a little bit further, one person we did not talk about is DB. A lot of she doesn't have a. It's weird, like her like history at Rogue is very strange. Like she'll have like really cool like moments there, but they'll be overshadowed by what she does, kind of like during the competition in terms of like being upset, the perceived notion that she's screaming at judges or she's having a fit or anything like that. And once again, that kind of happened here too. But I want to look past that. I mean, she still finished 11th besides some things, but she obviously a third, a fourth, a seventh on the run. Yeah, she had a 20th place, a last place in the
Back squats.
the back squats. Yeah, but I just I know it's just unfortunate, but that's what you get with DB. She's a very uh, emotional person, and that's because she cares, and she really cares about how she performs and what she does on that floor. Not just for her, but for people that represent her, the people that are friends, the people that are fans of her. So don't think that she's people that are saying stuff that she's immature or a brat. I'm like, it's bigger than that. She just really cares about what she does, and it's like she wants the best for herself, and she knows what she can do. And she'll probably tell you this was not this is not the type of she's not an 11th place athlete. She's not an athlete that finished 20th. She's that's she's just emotional. You have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I think we talked about it with Lucy just briefly that she had a really tough start to Sunday.
Yeah.
She posted on Instagram how disappointed she was in herself after that
Yeah.
pegboard event, and she thought that should have been an event she would do really well on, that she should be good at all those things. Looked like her hands ripped. She made a couple of calculation errors. She was on the side of the pegboard that was difficult for me to see from where I was sitting, so I'm not sure exactly what happened. But I was really impressed with the bounce back. And granted, it's on a workout that on paper looks good for her, but you still have to have the mental of a
Mhm.
capacity to like get back into it. She's an emotional person, and that can be a really good thing. It can also be a costly thing in competition sometimes. But she was able to weather that storm, bounce back with a good event, and then I don't know what was visible on the broadcast during the final because she was kind of the last one out there, but there was much more drama happening in the middle of the floor. Um, she was happened to be in the lane immediately in front of me,
Mhm.
so I saw what was going on there, and she was. I mean, she actually she saw me. She made eye contact with me at one point, and she was like, "What?" She had gotten a no rep. The head judge had come over. I think in the commotion of that was a really fast event. There was a miscommunication. She thought that the head judge had overruled the judge and given her a rep. That wasn't the case. I don't think that ended up being the case. So then she thought she'd finished the workout. She ran. She got called back, and it was just a chaotic finish to the event. And she has taken like some criticisms over the years for a variety of different things. Some may be fair, some warranted, some definitely not. And when that happens to her, then every like small things become big things because of that. But Danielle, I think she's a lot tougher than people give her credit for, which is kind of crazy to say if you watched her documentary and realize the
Mhm.
things that she's had to go through at really really young and early stages of life, that stuff stays with you. So I give GB a lot of credit for staying in the fight. I think that actually, considering the totality of the couple weeks leading up to it, and even that day of competition, that in frustrating situations she handled herself better than she would have in the past. So I hope that she's like I totally fair to be frustrated with your performance on the floor, but I think also in her case, I think she can be proud of the way that she dealt with that despite not performing the way that she would want to or expect herself to on some of the events.
Yeah. Uh, okay, Haley Adams. Uh, wow. I don't know if do you think I think when I look at this for Haley Adams, I think I look at this weekend for her as a success, her personally a success. I don't know how you view it. I mean, obviously her previous time at Rogue, she finished fifth, I believe, right? And then that
She
was
had
I mean,
two.
shoot,
She's had two appearances prior, but one of them was online. So yes, the only
yeah,
live appearance was fifth.
yeah. But I don't think the result actually signify or is a good is a good example of actually how
Haley,
it was.
yeah, Haley's competitive, just like Danielle. She's not going to be like, "Oh, yeah, I finished 16th." But competing for Haley right now there's more going on there than just about her results in any individual event or on a leaderboard. And at least the crowd that was on site absolutely understood that.
Yes.
You know, and look, Haley stands out. She's young,
Mhm.
she's beautiful, she wears bright colors, she's fun, she's fun. She's been relatively open about the things going on with her over the last 6 months in a few different settings. Including in the run up to this one where they did that kind of mayhem preview to Rogue
Mhm.
episode on their YouTube channel, and it's clear to me that the crowd that was on site is understanding of the journey that she's been on off the field of play, and that they were right there with her celebrating the win. She was figuring out the log muscle ups as she went. She was figuring out the pegboard as she went. She was doing singles on the back squat, but she kept doing them right up to the last second. And the crowd cheered for her, as they did for every athlete, because this happened to some others as well. When she was struggling and found a way to overcome, struggling and found a way to overcome. And that is what CrossFit has taught people around the world in the affiliates to do, is to
Yeah.
face hard things, whether it's a back squat, a ring muscle up, a frustrating situation at work, getting cut off in a traffic sit. We've been conditioned through the work in the gym to understand how to face hard things and overcome them. She has a chance to do that on a big stage, and all the people there were right there celebrating that with her. I think because they've done that too. So I would agree with you.
Yeah. Mhm. Her ending with a heat win in a workout that you wouldn't expect her to win. What a way to kind of finish. Ends with the seventh on the sandbag. Um, so
Well, it's different from the squat snatch. It's like it's a weight that she can move, and when she can move the weight, and it's for reps at these kind of moderate-ish heavy percentages, she's
yeah,
actually really good at that. So
yeah,
yeah, I didn't pick her to win her heat in that sandbag workout, but when you step back and look at it, it's like no, when she is able to do it, she does it for a lot of reps better than a lot of the field. That's why she's had so many top 10, top 5 finishes in her career.
yeah. You mentioned the crowd being involved and like kind of with her. And we'll jump down to 19th and 20th. The crowd were really involved with Taylor and Emma. Kind of like the kind of like home court, home field, and they embraced that, and the crowd embraced that. And I thought, again, Emma, we don't know what point in her career is. I mean, the figures, stats, data would say that she's kind of trending down, and she's someone that's struggled with a lot of things, whether it be her health and some stuff personally. But for her to show up, to put on a show, she looked like she was having fun out there. I think she was one of
You're
those
not
athletes.
gonna go you're not gonna go to a competition that's this elite and see athletes like Emma McQuaid and Yorgos Kervis finishing last and having a smile and a
Mhm.
good time from start to finish of a competition very often. And it has to do with the things you said about Bill and Katie and their team, and it
Mhm.
also has to do with the crowd here.
Yeah.
These are the athletes that they've been cheering for forever. They earned the right to be in this field. And even if they're finishing last, the people here in Europe respect and appreciate their performance every time they take the floor.
I was really, I think in terms of us, like having data points, I think this is a very big one for Taylor Howe. Um, you know, I wasn't sure if she would. I mean, she came up kind of gimpy in one of the workouts on day one, and I wasn't sure. We've seen her in a couple competitions where she's withdrew because of injury, but for her to kind of make it through this whole work, this grind that is Rogue, and have a couple top 10 finishes, I think that's very, very encouraging for someone like her.
Absolutely agree. I think we talked about it prior to the competition. It's the biggest stage that she'll have had the chance to compete on, and she had some great performances, and she made it through the competition, like you said, which has not always been the case for her. So I would say across the board, just it's. I don't think. Yeah, there's some athletes that are going to walk away upset with their results, and some of them did really well, and some of them did really poorly based on the numbers on the left of their name. But that's how it is
Mhm.
to be an elite athlete. Like if you didn't win, every one of them is going back home saying, "I could have done better. I should have done better. I want to do better. I'm going to do better." That's why they're
Yeah,
in the field to begin with.
yeah. And kind of like we said in terms of Dana kind of falls in that. Dana Paran kind of falls in that whole that Taylor Howe where we have now more data points, and Yeah, I thought, I picked her 17th. She finished the 17th. I know most people had her at 19th or 20th, but I was impressed by what she did, especially in that level of competition. That's the most people she's competed against, or level of competition and fan wise too. And flying over from Chicago, being a relatively unknown, and she went out there and especially at last event, she had fun. She was one of the last people. She was the last one in her heat, and she came across, smile on her face, asking the crowd. Her last one, she asked for the crowd help and everything. It's like, and if you know her, she's normally a quiet, reserved athlete, but she looked like she was having fun. And I think that's what the crowd kind of brought that out in her, and you got to see a little bit of her personality. But some good finishes. I know she's one of I think two. Her, Sydney Wells were the other athletes that had two last place finishes, but she offset that with an eighth, a fourth on the duel, and then another eighth. And then yeah, I thought overall Dana should be very happy and very proud of what she did.
Well, that was honestly, it was a fun weekend. We weren't planning to do these podcasts. I'm really happy that we did. It was a different weekend for us, a little bit less involved with the competition itself, and therefore a little bit more able to celebrate the competition. I think instead of being focused on some specific jobs, we were able to take a step back, talk to a lot of people, hopefully convey some stuff to you guys that's hard to see from home. Did get to meet a lot of you on site this weekend, which was really cool. And for those of you that were starstruck and didn't say hi, you better say hi next time. We're not that intimidating at all.
Yeah. And don't apologize. I had a couple of people that stopped me and said, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you." I'm like, "You're not bothering. Don't apologize." I'm like, "Let's talk. What's your name? What do you like? What can we do better?" It was great having conversations, especially so many people came up to us like, "Hey, thanks for talking about Europe. Thanks for being, letting people know what's going on here. Like, we definitely appreciate it. And, we enjoy doing it. And it's just like, but we try to balance things out. This isn't a European show. This isn't a North America show.
No, but those words mean so much to us.
They
Like
do.
we feel good about what we're doing, but don't we are people too. And sometimes when engagement's low or people say critical things about us, like we can question what we're doing and why we're doing it. And those little words sometimes mean a lot more. So if it doesn't have to be us, but just people in your life in general. If you're thinking something kind about someone, tell them.
Yeah.
It's going to do nothing but good.
Yeah.
Charlotte, any words on where the competition will be next year? Yeah, we heard some stuff, but I don't think that's our information to share. So we'll let that come out in the time frame that it's supposed to.
Well, shoot, the Suns came out again, so
I know. I've gotten such good weather in Europe. I actually packed for like cold and rain and snow in Norway. It was amazing. I went down to Bilbao. They told me it's usually rainy this time of year. Nope, it was beautiful. And now up in Scotland, we've had sun on 2 days during a time of year where it can be gray and rainy as well. So just counting the blessings. And one more stop on this European tour for us this month of Europe. So we will be leaving Scotland today and heading to Belgrade, Serbia later in the week. We are planning to do a show previewing the Belgrade games at some point. We haven't scheduled it yet. I actually been talking to a couple of people here. We got some cool guests coming up over the next couple of weeks, hopefully. But we'll shift focus. We'll publish the article about Laura and Tia, and then that'll probably be the last kind of Rogue focus thing we put out on there. Well, we'll have Marius's a recap that he's pretty excited to share with you guys about the competition as a whole. We'll feature some pictures that Patrick and Renato took this weekend. I just want to say thanks to those two guys, Renato with Fury Photography, Marius with Truth Films were our media guys this weekend. And collectively, they have gathered a ton of stuff that we'll be able to use for a while to help celebrate these athletes in different ways throughout their careers. Strike Movement has been the supporting partner for us through all the road coverage. They were with us at Tier SoCal. They were with us at the games. They've been supporting us on the podcast. If you guys have not tried out Strike Movement yet, check them out. Haze trainers are amazing. The transits are really cool. They just dropped a new colorway. Some of the apparel is amazing. I'm actually, if you saw me on site, the lightweight kind of cargo-y pants I've been wearing, I got those in California during SoCal, and they've been like my go-to on the road. Saw some people wearing some United by Motion sweatshirts, and we were Patrick and I were like, hey, we know that. So those are some of the people that we couldn't be doing this without. And then as Patrick, I'm sure, is preparing to say, you guys, it's it means a lot to see some of you, to get the kind words, but we know there's a lot of you that just watch and soak it in without ever getting the chance to say hi or to meet us. But we know that you're out there, and we appreciate you more than we probably can express.
Yeah. And it's Monday. So that means, let's start the week off. Just sun's out here in Scotland. Hopefully it's sunny and nice wherever you are, or whenever you wake up, or whenever you hear this. But yeah. So that's it. But yeah, we'll get a show out this week, previewing the Belgrade games. Should be fun. In terms of the athletes there, something I'm looking forward to going to and experiencing, and also, an opportunity to celebrate Lazar too. So yeah, but yeah, thanks to everyone, and be friendly, our friends.